This is Sex with Everyone, and I am your host, Riley Mayhem. I am so excited to be sharing my very first interview with all of you beautiful people. Thank you for joining me today. I cannot tell you how much it means to me. Today, I am talking with Kim from Jacksonville, Florida. She is actually my mother's best friend and somebody that I have known my entire life. So it was really fun getting into this kind of nitty-gritty conversation with her. So she and I discuss how she is a woman approaching her 60s and the evolution that she has witnessed in society from when she was a child to today. We talk about her sex life with her husband and how they tried hormone therapy and how it transformed their sex lives together. And then we also get into how she's currently going through a divorce and, getting divorced after 30 plus years and what's kind of on the horizon for her and what she's looking forward to exploring next within herself and for herself. So anyway, without further ado, let's get into it. How you doing, Kim?
I'm good. How are you?
I'm good. I'm excited to be sitting here with you and having you as my first guest.
And I'm excited to be with you for the whole weekend, so near to my birthday. This is like, having you here has been like a gift for me, and I thank you for coming.
I'm so glad to hear that.
Well, let me start by saying that I will be 59 years old here in a week or two. And so my experiences, the experiences of people my age, I think both men and women are very different, or at least I see them as being very different from the kids that are coming along now, or, the Gen Xers or the millennials, because the thoughts and the social mores have changed so much. I, for example, grew up in a conservative Christian family. And it was drilled in my head from a very young age that I was not to lose my virginity till my wedding night. And so, of course, I lost it much, much earlier than that. But, it was secretive and it was hidden. Yeah. And now it's not such a, the loss of virginity is not while it's still a rite of passage, it's not like the rite of passage that it was when I was young.
Sure, yeah. I imagine, when you lost your virginity and everything, like, did you feel like you had some support system, at least with your friends, or was it truly like completely hidden, like just to yourself and the partner that you had?
I was younger than the average when I lost my virginity. I was 13. And I didn't really have a whole lot of support system with, I didn't tell anybody. It was a secret. It was hidden. Yeah. I didn't, that was definitely not something I would share with my also conservative Christian friends, or anybody in my family. Yeah. So that was kind of my secret for a couple of years. Yeah. And did you continue having an active sex life after the first time, or was that just I did.
Yeah?
I did. I was in love with an older boy. Yeah. So I did, and it lasted for a couple of years. Yeah. So, but it was a secret on everybody's part, and which it would be today because of the ages. Yeah. He was over 18. So. Oh wow! Yeah. Yeah. So now that would be. That would still be something that's hidden, but the laws are much more aggressive toward that sort of thing now than they were back then. Back then that was a feather in his cap. Yeah. And a secret for me because I had just become damaged goods and, no decent man was ever going to want me. Hmm. So I felt like I was kind of set a sail after that. Yeah.
How do you think that affected your mentality about sex or yourself after you guys broke up?
I credit him with ruining my life for 20 years. It took me 20 years to get over that. Wow. I was led into something that I didn't really quite understand. Yeah. Had I have been in love with a boy that was 13, it would have been much less dramatic for me. But this, this man was a little older than me. Yeah, and my parents eventually did find out. Hmm. And that ruined my relationship with them. And then my father died in the midst of all of that.
Oh, my goodness.
And so, yeah, I was 13 to 15, and I was probably 35 or 36 before it's like, okay, this is what happened. You know, the past is the past, and I can't change it. Mm-hmm. I did learn a lot from it, but they were lessons I did not need to learn at that age.
Sure. Yeah.
It was, you know, a lot of heavy, and, you know, of course he was older, so he had a lot more freedom than I did, and therefore he dated a lot of girls, which he kept secret from me, and I thought I was the only one. So it was just, you know, it was a very painful time. I wouldn't want to relive that. And if I had a teenage, you know, especially a young teenage daughter, I would be very, very aware and try to prevent that from happening to her.
Yeah. How would you say that also affects your next 20 years of sexual relationships that you've had?
Not so much.
Okay.
I kind of went from one boyfriend to another, but then the thing that young people have that are coming up to now are you know, much more freedom of sexuality and to express themselves and get to know themselves. Mm-hmm. So I guess I was probably in my mid-50s, I became bi-curious. Mm-hmm. And, you know, wished that I had explored that avenue when I was much younger, but I had already done something once in my life that had very much, you know, disappointed my conservative Christian family, and I did not want to do that. So, and I didn't want to run the risk of doing that again. You know, now both my parents are gone, and most all of my family's gone, and I live many, many miles away from people that would see me every day. So that would be something I would be a little bit freer to explore now.
Yeah.
Right now. And that may be something I explore in the next few years. But,
yeah. I mean,
so.
You know me, I definitely think that it's never too late to start exploring anything that you want to start exploring.
And, you know, right? And I'm also poly-curious.
Yeah?
You know, that might be...
Really? Tell me about that.
That might be something I would be interested in for future relationships.
Yeah.
I see that. I feel like that would probably serve young people with stronger, better, more natural hormones than someone, you know, by the time you get to be my age, your kids are gone, your kids have been raised, they're through college, the money you're making is yours, most of us, our property's paid off, and your life is kind of yours now. Mm-hmm. Whereas before, I was concentrating on a career, I was concentrating on a marriage, I was concentrating on doing the right thing per my conservative Christian upbringing. Yeah. And now, who cares? Me.
Yeah, right? Yeah, it's your life for sure. Yeah. You know, I know that very sticky situation, you know, in your personal love life, and I didn't know if you wanted to touch on that at all or not, and, you know, how that's kind of affecting you.
Yeah, I married 22 years ago. I married a very hot, a bad boy from, you know, he was someone that I had known briefly as a young adult. And then inadvertently, I lived in Southern California and he lived in Northern Florida. And just through a slip of fate, he came back in my life. And we ended up getting married and have been married for 22 years. And then he announced about 4 months ago that he was not happy and wanted a divorce. So I've been I've been everywhere since then. Emotionally, I've been happy, I've been unhappy, but I'm starting to see now that, you know, this is going to free me up to travel. My husband does not like to travel. It's going to free me up to travel and to experience new things and maybe to explore a side of my sexuality that I've never explored before.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, that's gotta, I mean, I know that right now you're still just in it. You're still in it and experiencing all of the things. And I'm sure, I have no doubt that you will be for quite some time, you know, figuring out how to process this situation and all the things. But I can only imagine that a part of you is a little excited about potentially exploring poly or exploring, you know, other women or different kinds of relationships or, you know, things that you felt that you couldn't really explore before.
And then, you know, and then there's also the part of me, I've always been most attracted to men in their 30s. Mm-hmm. So.
Yeah? You want to be a little bit of a cougar?
So the plan, the unspoken plan is you get a younger man
Yeah.
that can work, that will work your whole life. And so you can retire and not have to worry about money because he's got an income and he's your boy toy.
I love that.
As long as you keep his confidence up and keep him happy. I mean, of course, at 60, I would not be able to entertain a lifelong relationship with, say, someone in their 30s. Just too much difference there. And I have been...
I don't know. I mean, I've known plenty of people
who
have,
you had
large,
an older...
age gaps, Like, I mean, it definitely... as long as both people are in it, and enjoying each other, and there's growth and laughter and love, or whatever you want to get out of that relationship, as long as you're on the same page, like... There's nothing wrong with that. And not every relationship has to be forever.
And not every relationship has to be, live-in, all-consuming. Whereas I grew up believing that, once you had slept with a man, you had to become his wife. Yeah. And that, while I have let go of that, but it's still sort of there to some degree. And if I like, if there's something about you I like enough to sleep with you, I'm probably going to want to keep you around. And if we don't share feelings, then someone's going to end up hurt. And that's probably going to be me. And so then we're back to where I started from of, I don't want to go through that again. I'm too old for that. I've already lived my prime. So I kind of, have to really wrap my own personal mind around, this is just for this summer, or this is just for tonight, or, take what you can and enjoy, but it's not going to last forever.
Yeah.
He will meet someone more appropriate for him, or she will meet someone. I would probably pick someone near my own age for a female. I just can't wrap my mind around having a woman for a life partner.
Yeah?
Yeah.
Why is that?
Too much alike.
Yeah?
Yeah, I mean, the hormones are the same.
Yeah, what's wrong with that, though?
Let's say I've never had that behavior modeled for me.
Okay,
let's put it that way.
That's super fair.
Yeah, I've never... I mean, while I've grown, I've had friends that are, lesbian couples and have been for years and years and years. I never lived with them.
Yeah.
I never saw the dynamics. And I am friends with, until just recently, friends with a couple of high school girls that I actually made possible for them to get together.
Aww.
And they've been together, they got married when they could. But they have actually been together probably 30 years. And the one, I am better friends with the one than the other. And the one that I am not good friends with, I feel like is being very abusive, emotionally abusive. She's narcissistic. And, she's abusive to the one that the two that I'm really better friends with.
Yeah.
So, there's that.
Yeah. But that's, I mean, in my mind, that's just people. That's not necessarily like because of it's a woman and woman, relationship. No, not necessarily. Yeah. But, I think of all the long-term relationships. Anybody can be narcissistic and bad, But of all the long-term relationships that have been modeled for me, theirs is probably the longest and the scariest. Just because you have history with someone does not necessarily make them a true friend. Yeah. And, I've then since met several other people that I consider true friends, but I don't have history with. Yeah, sure. That makes sense. It makes perfect sense. Yeah. And those relationships are no less valuable or legitimate than the ones that you have had history with. And I know we talked about this a little bit yesterday, but I feel the same way about romantic sexual relationships as well. Just because you have a history with somebody that you've been with for 22 years, that's not a reason to stay with somebody if it's no longer, working for both of you. And that doesn't mean that if and when you find another romantic sexual partner, that just because you haven't been with them for 22 years means that it's not as healthy or as good or as legitimate of a relationship for you at that time. You just have to, be present and appreciate it in the present moment, regardless of the history or the future of it. And you're the only person that has ever put it to me like that. And I noticed, after you said that, I have sort of in the last 24 hours kind of changed my thinking a little bit. Oh, yeah? Toward my husband.
it just, it's just not working anymore. We're very different. And, yes, there are things I could have done differently. Out of 22 years together, probably 19 or 20 of those years were great years.
And that's incredible.
Yeah.
I mean, that's truly outstanding.
Yeah. And 22 years ago, we had a lot more in common. Mm-hmm. We were both climbing the career ladder. Neither one of us wanted children. We both wanted a boat. And we both worked very, very hard. And as we still do. His interests have kind of, taken a little detour or headed off in a different direction than mine. One thing that did keep us together for as long as we stayed together was we were both very, very physically attracted to each other. Mm. And, while we talked about doing some exploring, sexual exploring earlier, I was allowed to do, and we did some of that together, mm-hmm. too. And with older men, the downstairs piping just doesn't work quite as well as the 30-something. And so, after the plumbing quit working optimally, let's say, we found other solutions, and he also became very, very creative.
Yeah.
And willing.
Yeah.
And, we explore different things that way.
Yeah.
I mean, sex is a big part of our lives, but it's not all of our lives. So, for him, the decision has been made. He's got some health issues now, and the decision has been made that for the most part, is over for him. Mm-hmm. And he's ready to explore different avenues, and I am exploring different ones still than what he is. But he's looking to replace that part of his life with something else, I think. For a woman, I don't think the downstairs piping ever really quits. Hmm. And especially if you are on hormones, it doesn't quit. It does not.
Yeah.
The body works. The mind works. Anybody over 50 out there that is having waning sexual feelings, go to a hormone clinic, get tested, get your hormones. Because, for about 5 years, I felt like a teenage boy.
That's amazing.
I know. And he took them too.
Yeah.
And so that was when we did most of our exploration. But,
what hormones were you all on, if you don't mind me asking?
We went to a clinic and they tested our blood, testosterone for both of us. Mm-hmm. I got one called DHEA, which is like a blank hormone, and it goes to whatever you need it to go to.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah, and for me, it really helped me with my appetite, and I did lose some weight. He got a testosterone shot every week, whereas I only got one once a month, and I took like 25% of the amount that he took. And then he did start the health problems. He had the heart attack and went on a blood thinner. And we've moved up to the hormones that we were taking 10 years ago are no longer available. Mm. So we have moved up to a pellet that is implanted into under the skin on the hip. And with the blood thinners, he can't have that anymore.
Implanted?
Yeah. It's just like it's about like a pencil lead. And a little hole is cut, about like a scalpel, maybe a quarter of an inch. And then they use a tool to push that down in there. I watched him get his done.
And so that's like a slow release?
It's a daily release of progesterone, estrogen, testosterone, whatever hormone that your body is lacking.
So then he no longer had to go in for like weekly injections and stuff, right? Yeah. Interesting. So after getting those implants, how did that change your sex life? I mean, you said that was the purpose of getting those hormones. So what kind of difference did you notice?
For myself, outside my sexuality, I think I was 50 when I started, mm-hmm. and I felt like I was 35 again, energy-wise.
Wow.
Yeah. But then as my body continued to age, I went from 35 on up, but it was like I would age 4 years in 1 year. So, the first year it was like I felt 35, and the next year I felt 39, and it went on up. But then
interesting.
That particular type of hormones was discontinued, and we started another type, which is the pellet that is implanted. And I still felt very, very good with that. And, my sex drive was good, and his sex drive was good. In addition to the pellets, there are also other pills that they will give you. And we both did that. We both did well. He only had one of those before he had the heart attack. And so he won't be able to get another one for, another couple of years yet.
Yeah.
And
but at the time, it really,
it made a big difference.
Yeah.
In energy level.
And how did that, I know that it also, made your libidos go up, how did your sex life, being revamped in that way, did that at all change your relationship together?
Yes.
Yeah?
We were very in love, and, neither one of us could do any wrong in the other one's eyes, and, we followed each other around like puppies, and I started the hormones a few months before he did. It got to the point where literally he would hide from me. But then also he started a job that required him traveling, and and he opened a business on the side. Those two things together made him very, very tired. And then I think that plus 48 years of smoking cigarettes led to his heart attack. Mm-hmm. And so that aged him quite a bit in 6 months. But then after the heart attack, his whole mindset changed.
Yeah.
So I think that's, and there's still a possibility we could either stay together or get back together. But I'm learning how to roll with the punches. This is a time for me to travel and reconnect with relationships that have sort of waned because either A, I've lived thousands of miles away, or B, because I was married and was busy attending to my husband.
Yeah.
And, I think the mindset, especially with American women and American men, look at a woman like, you are blessed to have me in your life. So you are going to do everything. You're going to take care of the house. You're going to have the kids. You're going to raise the kids. You're going to work a full-time job and anything else I need done on the side. And that might be okay for very young people. And, and that definitely worked in the 50s and the 60s and the 70s. But now people are changing. I think women are going in on a more level playing field as far as you're not as big of a prize as you think you are. Get that vacuum out. But unfortunately my husband and I were both raised in the male domination. He is a big prize for you.
Yeah.
And while I've been able to let that go quite a bit, he hasn't. And so we right now we are very apart, but I still love him, and and we may continue a romantic relationship, but on a different playing field.
Yeah.
For example, not living in the same house.
You're definitely in a place right now where there's a lot of different possibilities and outcomes to the situation. Yeah. It's not so hard and fast, divorced and done. It sounds like you guys have a little bit of figuring out, what exactly you both want.
Yeah, but
we're the relationship.
At this point, we're not leaving hating each other.
Yeah.
And that's what I didn't want to do.
Yeah, of course.
As far as getting involved again, older women, for example, we make our own living. My generation and the ones after me, we make our own living and we're not as dependent. And so it's more fathomable to have a romantic partner that you do not share dwelling with. And I would not mind to have another romantic partner, but I don't want to share living space anymore.
Yeah.
It's just mindset, I think.
Yeah.
It's just all mindset.
Yeah.
And for as far as live-ins, been there, done that.
Mm-hmm. You're looking forward to living on your own and kind of reclaiming a lot of your own time and space again.
And now I'm not living from hand to mouth, whereas, always before I got married, even though I made a lot of money before I got married and after I got married, I didn't invest and save wisely. So it's always been a from hand to mouth kind of thing. And now I'm looking at earning more money than I actually spend. And so, therefore you'll have more choices.
That's wonderful. Yeah, so you said you were going to do travel nursing.
Mm-hmm.
And you're looking forward to traveling all over the country.
Yes.
And you said they're 13-week
assignments.
Okay.
Some people travel in an RV, which is what I would eventually like to work up to. Mm-hmm. Some people travel. There's there's several websites dedicated to renting temporary furnished housing to nurses and other professionals that travel and work short assignments. And which is also very good knowledge to have. I'm hoping to spend my winters in Florida and work on an as needed basis a couple days a week as long as I'm able to and, get into one of those, 30 to 90-day housing situations and, live much more inexpensively than if I were to, just lease a condo for the winter.
As you've been contemplating going into travel nursing and everything, have you contemplated, how a dating life may look like? I mean, you could certainly...
Yes, I have.
Date around a little bit.
I have.
Yeah.
And there are... travelers are like a gypsy community all their own. And if you meet somebody, more than likely you're going to run into them again. A lot of people meet their mates traveling, and then there are the groups that run in packs, so to speak. A group of 4 or 5 nurses that are good friends and can share housing. When one assignment's over, they move together.
Well, I can imagine that, living that lifestyle, you just meet more like-minded people that are also enjoying living that lifestyle, so it's easier to connect with people that already share similar mentalities as you do.
And there are really 2 types of people that do that. The young, unmarried people that, have the wanderlust and want to experience life. And then the retired or nearly retired people that, maybe just need a little bit more money or, were tied down in a marriage or raising kids or whatever their whole career. And now they're free. Their time is their own.
Yeah.
And I kind of fall into the latter group, although I never had children. My time is my own now. And I always, my whole marriage wanted to be a travel nurse. I started out as a travel nurse. I started out as a Navy nurse, which, yes, lots of traveling. And then went on to travel nursing, and then through a slip of fate, somehow or other, a wrinkle in time, re-met my husband, who'd been a childhood friend. And, now that's on a different level than it was. And so my time is mine. My money is mine. And I just have, about 1,000 different things I'd like to do. But first and foremost, I'm going back to my tribe for a few months.
Yeah. And it'll be just so cool to see who you meet along the way, And
I've met a lot of interesting people traveling.
Or, you could just acquire, different 30-somethings along the way and, have little comet relationships that you can go back to whenever you want.
Definitely, yeah. Definitely much freer to explore one's sexuality while traveling than you are when you live in the city you were raised in.
Yes, that is for sure.
Well, I do not live in the city I was raised in. I live in the same city that I've been in for about 23 years now.
Wow.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's a long time to be stationary.
Yeah.
You had mentioned that you're bi-curious and you're poly-curious and stuff. So, what about those things pique your curiosity?
There have been times in my life when it would have been interesting to have had more than one partner.
Do you say that, there were people that you were interested in that way that you could have seen having a relationship with as well?
That, or, not everybody feels the same way at the same time. So, if you know of, say, there are 3 people living in the house, somebody's going to feel that way. Somebody every day is going to feel that way. 3 is not a good number, and it typically never works out for anything, but it would have been, that might be something I would consider.
When you say that, do you mean you and your partner would be dating a third person, together, or you would be dating both people separately?
I'd have to explore that more.
Yeah. I'm just curious what your fantasies about that have been, more than anything else.
Both, I would say.
Okay.
Dating a third.
Yeah.
Yeah, there was a time when, we talked about bringing a third in.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
How did that conversation go?
We put an ad in, at that time it was still Craigslist, and we were answered by all sorts of inappropriate people.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah.
Tell me.
Young.
Yeah?
One woman was not 18 yet. And
wow.
So we had to block her.
Yeah.
People that seemed like they were in it for the gain. You're an older couple. You can buy my lunch. You can pay for my school tuition. People looking to gain something. Yeah. Sort of a form of prostitution, I guess. I will come.
In exchange.
Yeah. And I wasn't really thinking, we weren't thinking that way at all.
Yeah. What were you hoping for? Who are you hoping to answer that?
people in their 30s, professional people, I would say educated or full-time working.
What kind of relationship did you want with?
We haven't gotten that far yet.
Oh, okay.
Maybe spend Saturday night with.
Yeah.
And then they go home Sunday morning and you don't see them again until the next Saturday.
Yeah,
so someone close but not in my space, if that makes sense. David and I both have a great need for alone time.
Yeah. And so that after doing the ad and everything and not finding quite what you were looking for, did that just kind of fizzle off? Or?
It kind of fizzled. Yeah. So I don't think that's something you can do via an ad. I think that's something you have to have wrapped your mind around. I guess it's pheromones. You smell different when you're single. You present yourself differently when you're single. And I learned this right after I got married. When I was single, I wore a wedding ring to the beach just because I got hit on so much. And then when I got married, even without a wedding ring, that stopped.
Oh, interesting.
And I had not changed, but I guess I smelled different or carried myself different.
That's really interesting.
Yeah. So, and I think the same thing with poly or, being involved with a swing relationship. I think you smell or you present differently. Just as I think homosexual people present differently to other homosexual people than they do to heterosexual people.
Yeah.
Does that make sense?
Yeah. I mean, maybe it's just about like what your intentions are, and so therefore you carry yourself differently, and you, in the subtlest ways that you probably aren't conscious of, signal differently.
I think so too.
Yeah. I imagine that's a lot of what that is. And so, maybe, doing an ad is not the best way because it's not in person, so you can't feel people out, and they can't feel you out in response in the same way.
Yeah, you can't smell the smell. And, and that was something that I had never read about in psychology or sociology in all my studies other than pheromones. Maybe you've got different pheromones when you want something different. Yeah. And,
that's interesting.
And I have had good friends or, long standing friendships with people that were homosexual, and I never guessed it, never thought about it. And then I have been hit on by other women, just right over my head it went. But that was when I was single and very much in the market for a husband. Yeah. You have to really, you open your mind to these experiences. And if you're only open to one thing, then you're only going to have one thing, or you're going to be disappointed. Yeah.
Expectations are like that. Yeah. It's like, you set an expectation, and so that's all you're looking for. And so anything outside of that perimeter is disappointment or upsettedness of some variation, until you get that thing that you are on the hunt for.
Exactly. Yeah. And, same thing I think in picking a relationship, it must be much easier for a blind person to choose a mate than a sighted person, because you look at somebody and no matter what this person has to offer, I don't like his eyes, or he's got a fat belly. Whereas a blind person doesn't. A blind person is not going to see that and immediately say, no, I don't want to get to know this person any better. You see what I'm saying? Yeah. Yeah. So in that sense, I think it would be a lot easier for a blind person to meet a person that much better fits them.
Yeah. And not get so hung up on like the physicality or the physical looks or whatever. Like a lot of our society, is very hung up on how we look. We see it, we're bombarded with it, and every media that is possible, people are obsessed over it. And so I think you're absolutely right. And as far as that, like, people get so hung up on the physical attributes that they're looking for that they just automatically dismiss anybody who doesn't fall into that.
And you don't get to see, this person is an excellent cook. This person reads the same types of books that I do. This person enjoys seeing, enjoys bike riding. You don't get that far because all you see is, well, he's got gray hair, or he's missing a tooth, or he's got a little bit too much flab around his waist, or, he's 4 inches shorter than I am, which I don't get that, but you could. I know I've met one man in my life that is actually shorter than me, and he's a doctor.
Yeah.
So, and I'm sure that, that particular, right, in different ages. And, like I mentioned at the beginning of this talk, I had a bad experience, or what turned out to be a bad experience, with a man that was older than me when I was very young. Mm-hmm. And so, I fell right into the, I can only date people between this age and this age. And at 59, there may well be somebody that is 79 that would be perfect for me.
Absolutely. Yeah.
So, or somebody that's 39 that would be perfect for me. Mm-hmm. But as societally, we're pre-programmed to pick someone in our own generation.
Yeah.
Now, at one of my dearest friends is a German lady that married a Peruvian man about 40 years ago. He was 10 years older than her. And he is an old 80, and she's a youthful 70. Mm-hmm. So, she's it's almost like, for her, it's almost like having to take care of a parent.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah. So, that's something to think about, while that, that man that is 40 and you're 20 is just perfect. Well, what's it going to be like when he's 80 and you're 60? Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Well, and I mean, I imagine that's just something that you kind of deal with when you get to that point, like I would hate for any relationship to be cut short or not start at all because of fear of the future like that, instead of maybe you have 10 really good years and then it's just,
not many
good
people,
for you anymore, and then you can move on,
but not many people in our culture think that way. They say, stay married no matter what. My in-laws have been married 70 years.
Wow.
They're in their 90s.
Wow.
Yeah. And that was just how things were done back then.
Yeah, it's huge mental, cultural shift for sure in the way that we view relationships now compared to, back then.
Yeah. Yeah. And, and like we were talking about earlier, back then, a woman just did not have a baby without being married. She was cursed, and the baby was cursed the rest of their lives. In some cultures that live in America, you have your children and then you get married. Mm-hmm. We're getting really far away from the conservative Christian views, which I grew up in. Mm-hmm. That, you didn't dare lose your virginity before your wedding night, but it was a really, really bad thing if you had a baby before you were married, or if you were pregnant when you were married.
Yeah.
That was just, really bad. And I look back of all the people I know, there are a lot of people out there that would have been better just to have their baby and go on.
That must be so interesting for you, to, have lived through like so many massive cultural shifts, especially in regards to sex and relationships and the way things are done and everything. And it sounds like you're really embracing all of those changes.
I'm embracing the new, I think the new way of life is much easier.
Yeah.
For a woman.
Yeah.
Yeah, very much. I'm glad we no longer have the ties that bind that we once did. And I think there are women that do a lot better. Mm-hmm. And
yeah, women are just definitely a lot more encouraged and supported, and able to support themselves than, and not be like seen as the town leper,
right?
For divorcing and taking care of your own kids and remarrying,
Yeah, even I read a book that took place during the Civil War, and husband was killed, woman with kids, and she had to turn to prostitution, and that wasn't. I mean, it was a fiction book, but I'm sure the ideas were very much the same. She had to turn to prostitution. And another woman who was more fortunate said, well, what do your kids think about that? And she answered with, my kids think they like to eat. Mm. And she was not able or was not in a position to support all of them.
Yeah.
And, and when you think about it, in that time, prostitution was very different. These people were doing that to support a family. And you don't see many women, well, I mean, you don't meet prostitutes anyway, but the stereotype of a prostitute now is a drug addict.
I mean, I wouldn't say that. There are tons and tons of sex workers out there that are supporting themselves and their families and their children and making the money that they can make to live a good life.
But you don't see them as much. You don't hear about them. You hear about the drug addict that stands on the corner.
That's interesting. I mean, I am in a very different circles and everything, so I hear a lot more of, very positive sex worker, stories and lives and everything. So that's interesting to hear about your take and what you hear in your circles.
But you're in a much more upwardly mobile city than I am. Jacksonville, we don't get that as much.
Yeah.
And then I'm a true crime addict. You don't hear about high quality sex workers.
Right.
True crime. Right.
Yeah.
So maybe that's why I have the stereotype that I do. But
perhaps.
I did work with a woman that used our place of employment as a cover. And she was a high class call girl and made a lot of money.
Yeah.
But, she had to have something for taxes. So she worked a couple days a week doing the hardest thing known to mankind. She was a patient care technician. I mean, these people have got the hard work and quite honestly don't know how she had the energy to run her second business at night.
Yeah.
But, I don't.
Good on her, though. I mean, yeah.
I mean,
hustling.
She offered to get some of the rest of us in it. Once again, well, at that time was married, but once again, at the end of the day, I was tired.
Yeah.
And didn't have that kind of energy, but she was supporting children.
Yeah.
She was left alone with her kids and was raising children. And then I followed a TikTok sex worker out of Las Vegas. And she just took us through a typical day. Oh, it's my laundry.
Yeah.
A typical day or a typical month in the life of a sex worker. And it's there's a lot more to it than laying on your back.
There sure is.
They have to get tested every 3 months. They have to get a license every 3 months. And that's a big moneymaker for the state right there. They rent space in a brothel. And, of course, the brothel gets their cut, and then she pays the rent.
Yeah. So, that's really interesting.
Yeah. I thought she was very interesting.
That's cool that you saw that on TikTok, too.
Yeah, it was it was probably 30 minutes of video, and she took you all through. Average-looking woman.
Yeah.
Not the high-class beauty, the 6 feet tall, 120-pound blonde. She was a very normal woman.
Sure.
And so I asked the question, at what point do you age out of that? And she said, you don't.
Yeah.
She said, there are, different men that want different things.
That's right.
And, you're in the house. So, different women specialize in different things. And, you're matched. So, if this man wants anal and the woman that he thinks he wants to be with doesn't offer that, then, they match him with somebody else. So there's a lot more to it.
That's so cool. Yeah.
Yeah. Just stuff I didn't know and didn't think about.
Yeah.
And so how can you have anything but respect for that?
Yeah.
I see people all the time on the street that I would not want to touch me, but they come in there and they're friendly. You have to be friendly. You have to get them interested. You're trying to sell something. And one of the things you're selling is the right to touch your body. And so what if it's an old fat guy with bad breath and no teeth? If he's got money, you do what you have to do.
Yeah.
But
and also there's something to be said for, if they don't want to with that particular kind of person, then they don't have to,
right?
Because they don't have to. Like they still have the right to say no.
But then,
and you have to respect that as well, which that's something that I really appreciate about, having the brothels and having it be a legitimate business, in Nevada. And I wish that it was legalized everywhere because it makes it safer for everyone.
I agree.
For everyone, the Johns too. Like it's just safer all the way around.
Yeah. And there's no such thing as unprotected sex. And, this lady keeps several different brands and sizes of condoms, and she matches. The man doesn't say, oh, this works best for me. She matches, his shape and his size with the brand that is going to work, that she thinks will work the best for him. But they don't have unprotected sex.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I have a ton of friends who do sex work in a lot of different ways. And it's always fascinating. And it's something that is always available to everyone because there are so many different kinks and interests and turn-ons. Every person has an endless list of things that do and do not work for them, but everyone's lists are different. And so
Right.
therefore anyone can be on somebody's list, right?
Yeah.
And so it doesn't matter, like you were saying, about your age or your weight or, whatever, physical attribute. It doesn't matter because guess what? You turn somebody on. There are tons of people that exactly you turn on.
Right.
And I love that. Do you think that with so much more knowledge and like TikTok, being available to you and to anybody to learn more about these things that, otherwise we just would have very little knowledge about, do you think that, your mentality around sex work has shifted quite a bit after learning, the ins and outs of their work life?
Yes, I do. I wanted to be a cam girl. I can do that, and
you can do that.
Not another soul on the face of the earth would have to know.
That's right. You can do it just for you.
So David and I talked about it, but it never got off the ground.
Really?
Yeah.
Do you think that would be something that you would still want to explore?
In retirement, yes.
Yeah?
There's another social media site similar to TikTok. I can't remember what it's called. I want to say Flying High. And my cousin was telling me about a 200-pound, 75-year-old grandma that, has all sorts of costumes and dildos and everything. And she makes like $30,000, $40,000, $50,000 a day.
A day?
Yeah.
What?
Yeah. So it's like,
holy shit.
Well, there's a foot fetish thing on that. And, there's a girl that models feet and makes all kinds of money. And I'm saying, she goes, and you've got pretty little feet. You should do that. So I think I could see myself volunteering at the Humane Society or reshelving books at the library before I could see myself becoming a cam girl. But, there's always desperate times call for desperate measures.
Well, I also am friends with quite a few sex workers, like I said, and they actually have a blast, camming and doing various different kinds of sex work. And it's certainly for the money, of course,
right.
But they also have a fun time,
I'm sure they do.
Yeah.
So, and I'm not real technical and good with computer and camera equipment, so that's also been a drawback. I would have to...
Sure. Yeah, it's definitely a learning curve there.
Big learning curve. And and a big investment, too.
Yeah.
Probably a good $10,000 investment on the equipment and the lighting and,
if you want to go that hard that quickly, certainly that is easy to do. But you also, I've known plenty of people who start with the super basics and then go from there.
And then there are people that start with just one studio light and a little stand and their iPhone.
Yeah. I've also known some people who have gone into sex work and their relationship with themselves changes a lot and their self-esteem goes up a ton and, and their sexuality changes a little bit, but in a positive direction for them. And I love that.
Somebody wants you because you have hair on your chest or because you remind them of their mother. Somebody that wants you for something you consider to be a negative attribute. I can't see how your self-confidence would go anywhere but up.
Yeah.
Somebody that wants you for something that you consider not good about yourself, or somebody that wants you because you're old. So
there's somebody for everyone.
There's and a fool and their money are soon parted.
And you're like, yes.
That would probably be something more of a fantasy for me of doing, some cam girl work or porn work. That would be more of a fantasy for me, but still fun to think about.
Yeah, it sure is.
And and if I end up having to buy a new house and I can make $700 or $800 that day, sure.
Yeah.
There's the good thing about the tech generation or having the tech available now is you can make a living doing most anything.
Yeah, it's just a matter of how creative you want to get.
Yeah. I seriously doubt I would ever do that, but it's always on the plate.
Yeah. That's too awesome.
Yeah.
Well, Kim, this has been such a pleasure.
This has been awesome.
Thank you so much.
Okay, let me hear the podcast when it comes out.
Of course. Well, of course.
How much much fun was that conversation? Y'all, I love having these conversations so fucking much because I am always learning something new. And, you know, whether it's a new story or a new perspective or something that I didn't even know was possible. Like the fact that you can take hormones when your libidos start waning because, you know, aging is a thing and that is perfectly natural. But guess what? You can do that and suddenly feel like you're in your 30s again. Like how awesome is that? I love it. So anyway, thank you so much for joining me. It was so special getting to do my very first interview for the podcast with somebody that I've known my entire life. And I got to know her in a deeper way than I've ever known her before because we've never had a lot of those conversations before. And so I'm just so grateful. Thank you so much, Kim, for joining me for that. So anyway, stay tuned. I have so many more interviews to come. The next one, you will be joining me as I go through Georgia and interviewing a couple people through there. So stay tuned. And in the meantime, stay awesome, friends.